It started like any other day in the office. I had been managing the fleet for the company for 12 years, ensuring everything ran smoothly, efficiently, and without incident. I knew the ins and outs of every vehicle, every route, and every challenge we faced. The team respected me, and the company trusted me to make decisions that affected the daily operations. I had been a reliable part of this organization for over a decade, and I thought nothing would change that. But that day when I walked into the office, everything changed. I was called into my boss's office, a simple invitation that seemed normal at first. But when I sat down, the atmosphere was different. There was a coldness in the air, a stiffness I hadn't noticed before. My boss, usually friendly and approachable, was distant, almost impersonal, and then he said it. "We're replacing you with software." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. After all my years of hard work, after all the effort and sacrifice, I was being replaced by technology. The very thing I had dedicated my career to managing the fleet, ensuring it ran smoothly, keeping everything on track, was now being handed over to a machine. I couldn't process it at first. The shock paralyzed me. I had spent years building relationships, fine-tuning processes, solving problems with the human touch that only experience could provide. And now, in an instant, all of that felt irrelevant. I wasn't needed anymore. I wasn't a valued part of the team. Instead, I was being replaced by a tool, a piece of software that could do the job, but would never understand the intricacies of human connection and the real challenges we faced. I sat there, speechless, as the weight of it all sank in. Everything I had worked for, everything I had built, was now obsolete. For 12 years, I'd been the backbone of the fleet management team. I knew every vehicle like the back of my hand, from the most reliable trucks to the ones that needed extra care. I knew every driver, their habits, their strengths, and their challenges on the road.
Always.
I understood every route, every delay, and every hiccup that could affect our operations.
Oh.
My job was more than just managing logistics. It was about making sure that everything ran seamlessly, day in and day out. I took pride in the work we did. I had been with the company long enough to see it grow and evolve, and I had played a key role in that progress. Over the years, I built strong relationships with our clients. They trusted me to get the job done, and I always delivered. I knew their needs, their expectations, and I went above and beyond to meet them. I wasn't just a manager, I was a partner to them, someone they could rely on. On the team, I was a mentor. I didn't just oversee the fleet, made sure the drivers were well-trained, well-prepared, and supported. I understood the importance of team morale, and I worked hard to create an environment where everyone felt respected and valued. We were a tight-knit group. I took great pride in being the leader they could trust. I always thought that my experience, my dedication, and the personal touch I brought to the job were irreplaceable. I knew the intricacies of the work, the nuances that only years of hands-on experience could teach. I didn't just manage a fleet, I lived and breathed it. But when the company decided to replace me with software, everything changed. It was as if everything I had worked for was suddenly irrelevant. The relationships I had built, the trust I had earned, and the years of experience I had accumulated didn't matter anymore. The company had chosen a path that didn't value the human element, the years of service, the knowledge, the relationships. They had opted for efficiency and technology, and in doing so, they wiped away everything I had spent over a decade building. In the months leading up to this decision, I started noticing small, subtle changes that gradually began to unsettle me. It started with casual mentions in meeting stock of automation, streamlining processes, and the excitement around the latest software and technologies. At first, I brushed it off, telling myself it was just part of progress, something every company goes through as they grow and evolve. Change was inevitable, and I had always been open to new ideas. But the more I heard, the more I couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting, something I wasn't part of. The conversations seemed to be moving further and further, away from the hands-on approach I had always championed. Instead of focusing on the people and the relationships we had built with our clients and team, the talks were all about systems, algorithms, and cutting-edge technology. It felt as though the company was slowly drifting away from the values that had guided it for so long. I wasn't sure how I fit into this new vision as time passed. I noticed that the respect I had earned over the years began to fade. Decisions were being made without consulting me, and my role in key discussions seemed less and less important. It was as if my experience, the very thing that had made me valuable to the company, no longer mattered. My insights were becoming less relevant, overshadowed by the allure of the latest software that promised to do it all. I began to feel more like an outsider, someone who had been an integral part of the company for years but now seemed to be in the way of their progress. I had spent years building relationships, knowing every detail of our fleet, and it felt as though all of that knowledge was being dismissed in favor of something. I couldn't possibly understand the intricacies of the job like I did. The shift wasn't just in the meetings or the talk of technology, it was in the air. I could feel it in the way people spoke to me, in the way the company was slowly distancing itself from the human touch that had made us successful. I was no longer being valued for what I brought to the table. I was being replaced by something faster, more efficient, and impersonal. Asterisk. When my boss handed me the news, it wasn't a conversation. It was a cold, impersonal decision that hit me like a ton of bricks. I had walked into the meeting room expecting a discussion about new goals, maybe a project update or even a strategic shift. Instead, I was met with a sentence that I never saw coming. They were implementing software to handle everything I had been doing for over a decade. There was no room for negotiation, no consideration for the years I had spent dedicated to making the fleet and the company successful. It wasn't framed as an opportunity for growth or a natural evolution. It was just a business decision. A line in a corporate email, a piece of paper with my name on it, marking the end of my career at the place I had helped build. No discussion. No appreciation for the late nights, the hard decisions, or the countless times I had put the company's needs above my own. The betrayal hit harder than I could have imagined. I wasn't just losing my job, I was losing the life I had built around the company. This place, these people, the work we had done together, it wasn't just a job to me. It was a part of my identity. It had been the framework of my entire adult life. And now, in one impersonal conversation, it was all slipping away. I had always believed that loyalty and hard work would be recognized, that experience would hold some weight. But in the end, it felt like I had been discarded, just another casualty of the corporate machine. I wasn't irreplaceable, I was obsolete, and no amount of dedication, no amount of effort had been enough to shield me from this cold reality. I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, looking back at a life that was now out of reach. The sense of betrayal was overwhelming. I wasn't just losing a job, I was losing everything I had worked for, everything I had dedicated my life to. I walked out of that meeting numb, my mind struggling to comprehend what had just happened. The company that had been my home for 12 years had just wiped away everything I had done, everything I had worked for. It was like being erased, as if the years of effort, the relationships I had built, the trust I had earned with colleagues and clients meant nothing. I had poured my heart into this place, long hours, hard work, and a commitment to make sure everything ran smoothly. I had built solid relationships with major clients, helped guide the company through tough times, and contributed to its successes. But now, none of that mattered. The clients who had trusted me, who had known my name, and relied on me for their needs, were now just names on a list. They didn't care that I had been the one to keep everything moving. They were moving forward with the technology, just like the company had. I wasn't just let go, I was replaced with something that didn't care, something that could never understand the nuances of human interaction and trust. The software would never have the empathy to understand a client's concerns or the wisdom to know when to go the extra mile. It couldn't build relationships or understand the human side of business. Yet it was now taking my place. The sense of loss was overwhelming. It wasn't just a job I had lost. It was the very identity I had built around that work. I felt like a stranger in my own life, unsure of what to do or where to go next. I had given so much to this company, and in return, they had given me nothing but an impersonal dismissal. The numbness settled in, a thick, heavy fog that made it hard to think, to move, to breathe. I wasn't sure how to move forward from here. The future seemed so uncertain, and all I could do was replay that meeting over and over in my mind. That night, sat alone in my apartment, the weight of it all slowly sinking in. The reality of what had just happened was like a heavy stone, pressing down on my chest. I had given everything to the company, countless hours, sacrifices, and years of my life. I had been a loyal employee, one who believed in the mission and gave it my all. And now, I was nothing. The software that had replaced me wasn't capable of understanding the complexities of the relationships I had built. It didn't know the clients by name, didn't recognize the nuances of their needs, and certainly didn't grasp the challenges we faced every day. The software didn't care about the people behind the wheel, the ones I had worked so hard to support. It was a cold, emotionless tool, designed to execute tasks, but lacking the empathy that made me an integral part of the team. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to destroy anything that could release the pent-up anger and frustration boiling inside me. I wanted to lash out at the injustice of it all, to make someone feel the pain I was feeling. But instead, I just sat there in silence, paralyzed by the weight of everything I had lost. The apartment, once a place of comfort, now felt like a prison. Every corner seemed to echo the emptiness I felt. The walls were closing in, and I felt completely alone. Their years I had devoted to the company, all the moments I had sacrificed, felt meaningless now. I'd poured my heart and soul into a job only to be replaced by something that would never understand the human element of what I did. I couldn't move. I couldn't think clearly. All I could do was sit there, consumed by the realization that I had been left behind, forgotten, replaced. The next morning I woke up in a world that felt unfamiliar, like I had stepped into a life that didn't belong to me anymore. The comfort of routine was gone, replaced by a quiet, suffocating emptiness. The job that had defined me for so long, the career I had poured my heart and soul into, was no longer mine. The familiar buzz of my phone, the daily meetings, the sense of purpose was no longer part of that world. The silence in my house was deafening. I had spent years surrounded by the constant hum of work, constant emails, calls, planning, and thinking about the next move. And now it was gone. My phone sat silent on the table, the absence of notifications almost mocking me. The house felt too big, too empty, and the realization that I was now without that part of myself was overwhelming. The uncertainty of my future weighed heavily on me. What was I supposed to do now? How could I move forward? I had always believed that my role was irreplaceable, that my dedication and experience meant something. But now I was left with nothing but a void where my career used to be. I had built my life around that job, and now I didn't know who I was without it. The isolation I felt was suffocating. No one seemed to understand the depth of the loss. It wasn't just a job, it was a part of me. And now that part was gone, leaving me to navigate a future I had never prepared for. The world outside felt distant and uninviting, and I found myself standing at the edge, unsure of how to take the first step forward. I had always thought my career would be a constant, something I could rely on. I was left to face a reality where nothing felt stable, nothing felt certain. I was lost, and I wasn't sure where to go next. I couldn't just accept what had happened without trying to understand it. I needed to answer something to make sense of the decision that had turned my world upside down. So, I went back to the office, hoping for clarity, for some explanation that could shed light on why I had been replaced so coldly, so swiftly. When I sat down with my boss, I wasn't sure what I expected, but what I got was more of the same impersonal corporate speak. He didn't even look me in the eye when he delivered the news. The decision had been made, and nothing would change. The software, he explained, was cheaper, more efficient, could handle everything I had been doing for years. It was as if he was reading from a script. There was no room for discussion, no acknowledgement of my years of dedication or the relationships I had built. It wasn't about me or my experience. It It was just a business decision. They had decided to move in a direction that didn't include me, and that was it. I wanted to scream, to tell him everything I had given to the company, make him understand how devastating this was. But the more he spoke, the more I realized. It wouldn't matter. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about what I had done for the company. It was about numbers, efficiency, the cold logic of business. I had spent years believing in the company, trusting it with my time, my energy, and my heart. The software could do everything I had done, and it was cheaper. In their eyes, that was all that mattered. The frustration inside me boiled over. I wanted to break something, to make him understand the magnitude of what I had lost. But I was powerless. There was no room for emotion here, no room for the years of loyalty I had given. It was a decision made from the top, and I was just another casualty of the cold corporate machine. The weeks after my firing were some of the hardest I had ever faced. The shock of being replaced by software, the emptiness of losing a career. I had dedicated my life to it, all felt like a heavy weight on my chest. But as the days dragged on, I realized that I couldn't stay stuck in the pain of what I had lost. I had to rebuild, even if it seemed like an impossible task at the time. I started by reconnecting with old colleagues, people I hadn't spoken to in years. Friends who had once been my team, mentors who had guided me along the way. It felt good to hear their voices again, to remind myself that I wasn't alone in this. They reminded me of the value I had brought to the company, the people I had helped, and the work we had done together. Slowly, I began to remember who I was outside of the role I had lost. I also started seeking new opportunities, testing the waters in industries I had never considered before. I worked on my resume, built new skills, and started looking at the world from a fresh perspective. Realized that I didn't need to be defined by the company or the job I lost. I was more than just a manager of a fleet. I had skills, experience, and knowledge that could be applied in so many other ways. With every small victory, whether it was landing an informational interview, learning a new skill, or simply making it through another day without feeling overwhelmed, began to rebuild my confidence. It wasn't easy, and there were plenty of moments when I questioned myself, when I wondered if I would ever find a place that valued me again. But with each step forward, I felt stronger. I realized that I didn't need the company to define who I was. I could forge a new path, one where I was in control. I wasn't the man who had been let go. I was someone who had the power to create a new future. And with every bit of progress, I felt the weight of the past slowly lifting. Looking back, I now see that being replaced by the software was the best thing that could have happened to me. At the time, it felt like the end of the world. I was devastated, blindsided, and lost. But in the months since, I've realized that it pushed me to rediscover myself, to dig deeper and explore opportunities I had never considered before. It forced me to take a hard look at my life and recognize that I was capable of so much more than I had ever allowed myself to believe. I'd spent so many years pouring everything I had into a company that ultimately saw me as replaceable. But in the end, that experience became the catalyst for change. It taught me that I didn't need to rely on the company or the title to define who I was. My worth wasn't tied to a job or a position, it was tied to the skills, values, and MCOs. Resilience I carried with me. I'm stronger than ever, and I know that my future is in my hands. It's no longer controlled by a machine or anyone else. I have the power to build something new, something that aligns with who I truly am and what I truly want. This time, it will be on my terms. I'm free to carve out a new path, one that is driven by my own vision, my own goals, my own sense of purpose. The future is no longer a place of uncertainty, it's a place of opportunity. I'm ready to take it on, knowing that I'm capable of much more than I ever realized. I will build something that is truly mine,